What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. Well, a really big game for the Arkansas Razorbacks in Arlington against the Texas A&M Aggies, a team that's beaten them 10 out of the last 11 times after Arkansas previously dominated the series when the two programs were in the old Southwest Conference. We're going to lean on Gigabit 24/7 insider Jeff Tarpley, as well as Curtis Wilkerson from HawgSports.com to help me break down this matchup. All that and more on today's episode of Hog Sports Live. I started to say Aggie Websider because that's where Tarpley used to be over when we were both at Rivals back in the day. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody there's plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can always tune in on YouTube. Be sure to follow the page if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to the channel. As I mentioned the other day, 71% of the people who watch the videos aren't even subscribed. So subscribe to the channel and, of course, hit the notifications bell so you're alerted anytime we upload new videos. We always stream the show live on Facebook, so if you want to get a question in, you need to go to our Facebook page. Be one of 90,000 Razorback fans to follow the page if you haven't done so already. Also available on Apple Podcasts. We are currently Arkansas's highest rated podcast, but we'd love some more 5-star reviews. We're almost at 1,000 reviews so far, so we'd love to get a 5-star review if you haven't taken a moment to do that. Also available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere else you can think of to find your favorite podcast. We are there at HawgSports.com. Where do we want to start out, fellas? There's so much to talk about with this one. So let's get to the basics, I guess. This matchup, Saturday, September 30th. It's an 11 o'clock game. It always feels like this is an 11 o'clock game. Kind of takes away some of it, in my opinion, for going to a neutral site. Neutral site games should be at like 6 o'clock. They just should. Anyway, SEC Network, AT&T Stadium, 80,000 capacity for football in Arlington, Texas, home of the Dallas Cowboys. This is going to be the second to last time that Arkansas plays Texas A&M in this venue. This is Arkansas's last time to be the home team. Texas A&M will be the home team next year, and then it should be over. I'm ready for it to end. I mean, it'd be fine maybe if it was every other year or something like that, but it's just every year in the same venue. I just think the negatives outweigh the positives. I damn sure don't think Arkansas would be 1-10 against Texas A&M in this series had it been a home and home. Arkansas has lost a lot of close games. The last 6 meetings have been decided by 10 points. We know there's been several overtime matchups. It's just been kind of a sucky series for Arkansas, and last year's game kind of encapsulates everything that has been going wrong for Arkansas in this entire series. Injury news real quick ahead of the game. We are expecting Rocket Sanders to be available now. The big question was on Wednesday if he was having zero swelling in that knee, basically, because Monday he practiced, didn't have swelling, so he was able to go Tuesday. They put a lot more on him Tuesday. So if he came out of Tuesday's practice and practiced Wednesday with no swelling, then it's a really good bet. It's a really good bet anyway, just looking at the way he's moving around and stuff. And that's typically how you do things. You go from like easing them into practice the 1 week when they're coming back from an injury like that, in this case a knee injury, getting them kind of accustomed to things, and then the next week is when you start preparing them. So that's pretty standard operating procedure for Rocket. We know that Hudson Clark is dealing with a bit of a shoulder. He was supposed to be in green still Wednesday. A.J. Green has been in a green jersey too. Both those guys are expected to play. Devon Manuel still dealing with a stinger. Not quite to where he was when they were really pleased with where he was early in fall camp. Not quite back to that level, but I think we saw a different impact at left tackle when he was in the game. And that's, again, nothing against Andrew Chamblee. He just, as I've been saying since he entered the starting lineup, still about a year away. Kind of like where Manuel was last year. Connor Wegman's out. There was a lot of suspicion. When I saw the injury, I was just thinking, like, you don't see college football players just, like, writhing in pain, like basically screaming in pain for a minor injury or something as mild as just a regular standard ankle sprain. I mean, you could see when the game was going on that this could be something that, takes him out for a while, and he's expected to miss the year. The good news for Texas A&M is they have Max Johnson, who's a very experienced quarterback. This is the guy that Arkansas faced last year. Led Texas A&M to a 27-10 win over the Auburn Tigers, 7 of 11, 123 yards with a pair of touchdowns. One of those was to his brother, who's a tight end. 4-star tight end in the class of 2022. Last season, he went 11 of 21 for 151 yards, 52.4% with a touchdown in the 23-21 win over Arkansas. We all know how that game played out. KJ Jefferson, it's not surprising when you see KJ Jefferson do some of the things that he does on the field that he thinks that he could jump from 12 feet out into the end zone, extending the ball. Of course, fumbled it, 97 yards the other way. There was a handoff involved in there, and Aggie turns the whole game around. And it took Arkansas a while to recover from that mentally, I feel like. I feel like they finally got their head straight, battled back. And then if you remember how this game played out, and a lot of people misremember it, but Arkansas was just driving it straight down their throat, ran into a 2nd and 5 deep in territory, and Ricky Stromberg snaps the ball over KJ Jefferson's head. Suddenly, 2nd and 5 turns into 3rd and 15. Arkansas has to settle for a field goal. It goes off the tip top of the upright on the right side. Cam Little, you usually don't see that happen, but it happens. Kickers miss field goals, and Arkansas lost the game because of it. It all started with that dive, and it ended with that snap, in my opinion. That's how the game played out. And then subsequently, you had a missed field goal. Cam Little is still clutch. Arkansas is 42-34-3 in this series. This used to be 41 before Texas A&M joined the Southwest Conference, or excuse me, the SEC, the Southeast Conference. Arkansas was 41-23-3. That's dominating a series. Now it's an 8-game edge. It's a shame that it's gotten to that point. We've all lived it. We've all witnessed it. But that's where things are. Tell you what's not a shame, and that's Ozarks Go. Our friends over at Ozarks Go provide lightning-fast internet. You can reach them at 479-684-4900. That's a local number because you're dealing with a local company. You're going to talk to local people. You can reach them online at ozarksgo.net/hog. They're up in northwest Arkansas, parts of Missouri, parts of Oklahoma. If you get Ozarks Electric, then you probably have access to Ozarks Go as well. I've used them for 2.5 years now. I've used just about everybody else up in northwest Arkansas that's been available to me, and nobody has compared to Ozarks Go so far. Even before they were sponsoring the show, I'd moved over to them. And my experience has been 100% uptime, which I've had no issues at all with internet for 2.5 years with these guys. So they're consistent, reliable, and they provide lightning fast speeds. I use the multi-gig service, which is 2,500 megabits per second. Lightning fast for all the stuff that I do in my office. Most people, and what I've used in the past is Gigabit, which is 1,000 megabits per second. That's going to work great for most people. They also offer several other tiers. But go reach out to them, 479-684-4900. Go find out if they're available in your area at ozarksgo.net/hog. Great local company that will treat you right and give you great internet. Trey Biddy stamp of approval with Ozarks Go. Okay, we're going to get over to Jeff Tarpley now. So Jeff Tarpley, Jeff doesn't tweet much. He's listed at 24/7 Tarp, I believe, but I don't think he's an active Twitterer. So you probably can't find his information anywhere, but gig him 24/7. So if you're a Texas A&M fan listening and want to know more about the Texas A&M Aggies, your favorite team, then you want to go to Gig'em 24/7 for the latest information over there. See what Jeff has to say for us.
Hey, morning, guys.
Morning, Jeff. How you doing, brother?
Doing great, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I appreciate you coming on. I think this is like the 3rd year that we've had you on the show. But this is always an interesting matchup, Jeff. I mean, what's your thoughts just right off the bat on the recent history of this matchup? And, Arkansas has obviously been on the wrong end way more than they should probably.
You know, Arkansas always seems to play A&M hard. I think part of that has to do with the fact that it's an old Southwest Conference rivalry. That's one aspect of it. I think the other aspect is that it's always the first, maybe the second SEC game for both teams. So there's kind of a sense of urgency, no matter whether you're 0-3 coming in the matchup or 3-0. It's always kind of a fresh start. And so also in that vein, you may be playing a real Power 5 team for the first time, because you may have played like an FCS, a group of 5 team, and maybe a lower level Power 5 team. So there's always some shock value, so to speak, whenever these two teams collide so early in the season. As a result, you tend to see some things you might see in the first game of the season. You see more busted assignments, perhaps. You see more big special teams plays. As a result, you get more big plays overall, and you get such massive changes in momentum. And what's happened during the course of this series is that typically A&M has always managed to make, despite and oftentimes Arkansas gets a lead early in the game. A&M always seems to find a way to fight back. And at the end of the day, they generate one more big play than Arkansas does. And that's for whatever reason, more team speed, more athletes, better coaching, doesn't matter how you want to phrase it. That's always been the difference, that one more big play that A&M's been able to generate.
Yeah, and this year may be a little bit different with both teams coming off of SEC games already. A lot of times this is the first SEC game for both teams. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Max Johnson. Obviously, we know Connor Wegman's out for this game, but Max Johnson's a guy with a lot of experience. What could we expect to see maybe that they would gear the offense towards differently with Max in there versus Connor?
Well, it's interesting. Even in the spring game, A&M Bobby Petrino tended to use his two quarterbacks differently. Wigman was more of a guy that they ran RPOs with. And when he was the starter, he tended to go off schedule, so to speak, more. Or he also tended to look for man coverage on the outside more and take advantage of deep shots. Johnson, they tend to run more of Petrino's West Coast background. From a schematic standpoint, you're going to see a little more play action. They might move him a little bit more. One interesting thing I noticed against Auburn was Johnson seemed to take a little bit deeper drop, and which bought him a little bit more time against a blitzing team that had success dialing up pressure against A&M in the first half. Johnson, though, he's a cerebral guy. He's going to be more of a check down kind of guy. Wigman was a younger guy, wanted to hit the home run. I mean, he would hold the ball, but again, that's one of the reasons. He took shots that eventually added up, and now he's out for the season. Mm-hmm. Johnson, on the other hand, is going to distribute the ball a little bit more. He's going to get it underneath to tight end Jake Johnson and slot Anais Smith more. He did take a shot down the middle deep last week to Evan Stewart, but probably those are going to be fewer and far between with him running the show as opposed to Wegman.
What are your thoughts on the Texas A&M defense? I mean, 273.8 yards a game allowed this season, 17.8 points per game, and that's including, what they gave up against Miami and Tyler Van Dyke, 451 yards and 5 passing touchdowns in that game, 2 field goals, kickoff return for a score. What are your thoughts just on the defense so far, and I guess what Miami was able to do to them, and is there any way Arkansas can maybe match some of those things?
I think there's a couple of differences. One, ULM and New Mexico were just totally unable to – they just didn't have the receivers, offensive line, or anything to make a passing game go. New Mexico had a little bit of success with their quarterback getting the ball out fast. What Miami did more than anything else was they discovered early on that, hey, if we just want to hold the ball and protect, then we can take shots down the field because A&M's rush is not going to get to Van Dyke. And that was a real problem for A&M. Since then, A&M has started doing some of the things, ironically enough, that they started doing with Mike Elko back when he was at A&M. They use more blitzes, but the types of blitzes to bring pressure so that you threw your hot reads, not down. You didn't get the ball downfield. You threw your hot reads on passing downs. You got the ball out, but it was always short of the sticks. You got tackled, and so A&M got off the field. So they started doing more of that. Now, A&M did generate 7 sacks last week. Auburn's quarterbacks are, as a duo, they're just not very good. They weren't very good from the get-go. Pre-snap, post-snap, it just didn't matter. And so they weren't able to read defenses. The receivers weren't able to break off their routes, that type of thing. So I think from Arkansas' standpoint, they're probably going to be. I think the middle of the line is probably going to be as good as what Auburn's was in terms of allowing pressure. Tackles might be more problematic for Arkansas. I think Van Enos is probably going to move KJ Jefferson around. I think he's going to try to take some shots down the field because when A&M's been in certain types of man coverage, they have been vulnerable to that. But I would recommend at this point that the way A&M is dialing up more pressure, that you've got to move them around a little bit more. And also one thing that nobody's really done much of this year is go to their screen game against A&M, get the ball out on the perimeter. Now, Tariq Chappell, Josh DeBerry at cornerback, they've been pretty good at being aggressive on the line of scrimmage. But if you get your RPO game going a little bit, then you can merge that bubble screen with the receiver going down the field or running the slant behind the nearest defenders. So I think that might be something to look for as well.
Jeff Tarpley joining us. Again, you can follow him at 247tarp on Twitter. He doesn't tweet a whole lot, but you can read all of his stuff at Gigam247. He's a senior writer over there. Hey, Tarp, real quick, I want to get you out with this. How do you think the game is going to play out on Saturday?
I don't think it's going to be any different than what we're used to seeing. I think that A&M is going to find a way to win by one score. I don't know exactly how that is. It'll probably be some kind of big play, but I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to happen. I don't think Arkansas is as talented as they were last season. At least it doesn't seem, just on what I've seen of them this year, things are a little more problematic for them in terms of their pass protection. I think their front seven's pretty good. Their secondary, they blitzed a lot last year, and that left them very vulnerable on the back end, but they're still having issues on the back end this year. I think A&M is better in terms of their run defense. They've just got a lot of size up front. But even if A&M has more experience this year, I think they're probably not going to hit the big plays that we were used to seeing in the games against the group of five competition. And so I think that'll kind of help keep it close. But in the end, I just think, as usual, A&M has more talent, and that will play itself out with one more chunk play that will enable them to take the victory.
All right, everybody. Jeff Tarpley joined us from Gigam247, senior writer over there. Go follow his stuff at Gigam247. Hey, appreciate you, Tarp. Thanks for coming on with us.
Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody. That's Jeff Tarpley. All right, we're going to hop over to Curtis Wilkerson now to get a little bit of the Arkansas side of things. Curtis, you can follow him at @KurtWilkerson_. And, you guys are very familiar with Curtis. He does a fantastic job for us and has for years at HawgSports. Let's see what he has to say.
Hello.
How you going, Curtis?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing well.
I kind of combined things. I said, how you going? How you doing and how's it going? Well, you got a lot going on, actually, because basketball today, you get to watch some practice, meet with Musselman, meet with some players and stuff. What are you expecting to see out of today? I know you got to be anxious with all the new faces.
I'm very anxious, and that's obviously the number one thing I'm waiting to see. I mean, they've got 7 transfers in there and a couple freshmen. It's going to be our first time to get a glimpse of those guys up close and in person. So, I'm looking forward to it. It's interesting because, Arkansas, they had their summer session where you get, 8 weeks and 4 hours on the court per week to do some workouts, but it's kind of a unique offseason for them. They had some injuries, some guys who showed up later than others. They had some late additions to the roster out of the transfer portal. So really, since school started, has been the only period here that Musselman's kind of had the entire team together. So I'm anxious to see what he thinks about them. Obviously how they look, and it is kind of a different look for this team. They're a little bit smaller, but more of a veteran group. They're more athletic. So how far along are they? Are they going to play some more small ball? Can they make the occasional 3-pointer? I don't know. We'll see. But I'm really looking forward to getting out there and seeing them. I think it's going to be an exciting team.
Muss seems to put together a different style of team every single year. Last year's team couldn't shoot threes. This year's team is undoubtedly going to be able to shoot the three pretty well. What type of team has he not put together yet? I mean, he's put huge teams together. He's put super defensive teams together, big offense. I mean, is there something out there that we can expect to see next year after this group?
Yeah, I mean, like the only thing that maybe we haven't seen from him at this point is like a Syracuse Jim Boeheim style of
Mm-hmm.
2-3 zone or something. But
Yeah.
I just don't think he has that in his DNA. If Eric Musselman starts running a zone, I'll be worried that he's lost his mind. But that's about it, man. It's a little bit different every year.
All right, Curtis. Let's flip you over to football now. Obviously, we always ask you, the keys to victory and what are the burning questions for this game. We always keep the things the same on keys to victory because they are the four things that really stand out in every group is penalties, turnovers, special teams, and key injuries. And we know how penalties have been. We know how special teams have been. We know how injuries are right now. And, of course, turnovers always play a big role and with every game. But we always have a fifth one that kind of is different week to week, and this one is keep the chains moving. And Arkansas has kind of been a little bipolar. They were on the right side of things against LSU, but against BYU it was a lot different story. What do you mean? What do you think Arkansas can do in this one?
Well, I don't know. I mean, hopefully they can kind of keep that mojo from last week. I mean, Texas A&M has been awesome defensively on third downs. I believe they've only allowed 10 conversions on 49 tries. That's one of the best marks in the country. And you hit on it. Arkansas has been up and down. I think they were 2 of 13 on third down against BYU, but 8 of 13 at LSU last week. So, I'd say having more success on first and second down to create a better third down distance would probably help them. But Arkansas hasn't necessarily dominating short distance situations either. So I think just keeping that mojo from last week, keeping those chains moving, explosive plays are awesome. You take those all day, but sustaining some of those long drives and then capitalizing on them, obviously, is going to be key. I think the more you keep your offense on the field, the less Bobby Petrino's offense is on the field, and you keep fresh legs on that defense, it might help you through a four-quarter game.
Looking at KJ Jefferson, he's coming off of his best game. I thought he was really poised in the LSU game, not just because staying in the pocket, but staying in a pocket that was oftentimes just collapsing around him. You think KJ can take advantage of this A&M secondary?
I really think he can. I think you're right. It seemed like he might have turned a corner a little bit last week. He did. He looked, in my opinion, probably more comfortable, decisive than we've seen at other points this season. Maybe that chemistry is starting to find itself with his targets out there. For Arkansas to win games, they need their best player to play well. I mean, you look at Texas A&M, they've got the second best pass defense in the SEC. They're 16th in the FBS. I think there's some fool's gold involved with that. I mean, they faced 3 of the worst passing offenses in the country, and the one good one was a Miami team that really shredded them. And so talking to a buddy who, covers the Aggies over there, he thinks the secondary is probably pretty clearly one of their weaknesses on that team. So maybe there's something there that Arkansas can exploit. And it's a good time to find out when you're starting to see that connection grow with Andrew Armstrong and Luke Haas. And, hey, they got Tyrone Broden involved. So maybe they're starting to figure some things out in the passing game, and they can pick them apart out there a little bit.
I always felt like when a celebrity dies young, this is kind of morbid, I guess, but you always have very fond memories of them, like Marilyn Monroe or something, she never got older. We never saw, what happened to Kurt Cobain or stuff. You always remember them at their peak. And that's kind of the same deal with Bobby Petrino. He isn't dead, but he obviously, the way things ended at Arkansas was very sudden, and he was coming off of an 11-win season. So there's still this mystique with Bobby Petrino that he can do, no wrong offensively. Against Arkansas, Texas A&M has a brutal stretch coming up, first of all. It's Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, Ole Miss, so on and so forth. It's a rough stretch coming up. But don't you think that Bobby Petrino is saving whatever tricks he has in his hat, all of his best stuff for this game against Arkansas?
Yeah.
Did you like my analogy also with celebrity deaths?
I did. That was a good one. I mean, he might be theoretically dead to a lot of people, and giving out things went down there. So I get it. But I mean, I think he absolutely does. I mean, we saw last year with significantly less talent at Missouri State, some of the things that they were able to do there. He's definitely got some personal interest at play here. And he's got some playmakers now. I mean, I think about Neighbors and Thomas last week from LSU. I mean, that might be the best 1-2 punch of receivers in the SEC, the country. Those guys are really good. But Texas A&M has some dudes over there too. I mean, Evan Stewart, he's really coming into his own. I think he's averaging over 100 receiving yards per game. Nia Smith, it seems like he's been there for a decade. I mean, we know how explosive he is, and there's others. So, we know that Bobby Petrino can really scheme things up and get his guys the ball in open space. Is Arkansas going to be ready for that? Can Travis Williams disguise some things or throw in some new wrinkles himself to kind of disrupt it? I think it's going to be a combination between, kind of a chess match there with the coordinators and, Arkansas also needing some guys on the back end to step up there and make plays against, a Texas A&M team that's got some good guys there at the skill positions.
Curtis Wilkerson joining us again. You can follow him at Kurt Wilkerson _ He's the HawgSports senior analyst and does a fantastic job, and especially a lot of great baseball content coming from Curtis and our man Andrew Ellis as well. Coming up starting today with, 3:45 today, Curtis?
3:45.
3:45 all starts, yeah. So important time. So could be a big year for Arkansas basketball. Back to football, though. Arkansas's defensive line, I mean, even when they're not getting 7 sacks, I still think they're not going to be taken advantage of. Facing really high-quality offensive lines in the SEC, I don't think anybody's just taking advantage of Arkansas's defensive line. We talked about the numbers and the depth there and the talent that they have. Do you think they can be disruptive against Max Johnson and the Aggie offensive line?
I think they can. The first half against LSU last week, I thought Arkansas did a nice job getting Jaden Daniels. They hit him on the first play of the game there, took him down a couple times. I thought they had him looking pretty unsettled for a large portion of the first half. The second half, that protection improved. He really started to sling it. I think about Max Johnson for Texas A&M. I mean, he's a veteran, tons of experience, really quality backup. He's still a backup. And we just talked about Petrino and his playmakers. I mean, to me, one way to keep the ball out of the hands of the playmakers is by
I do that every show now. I dropped you, Curtis. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, man. I heard that. I was like, what? Did he just throw his phone across
Sorry about
the room?
your ear.
But no, I do. I think one way to kind of keep the ball out of the hands of the playmakers is by disrupting the dude who's distributing the ball to him. So I think it'll be important for Arkansas Saturday to get a rush on him, and they've definitely got the horses there to do it.
You think Curtis? Do you think Rocket's going to play that much in this game? I mean, he's going to play, but I mean, could we really see 15 carries out of him, or are we going to see 5, 6?
I think it might be more the latter, but I say that, man, Tuesday out there at practice, he looked really good, and they were running the fastball period, and he had a big gain to the right side on his first touch, but his second touch, he took it to the right side again, and it looked a little bit bottled up, and he kind of ran into the back of one of his own blockers, but then he put on a spin move and cut it back inside. And he didn't get a lot out of it, but that just kind of struck me as a play to, I don't know that he would make that move if that knee wasn't feeling good, I guess is what I'm saying. So that kind of stood out to me. And again, like Pittman said, that they were kind of waiting to see how he feels. Is he sore? Is he getting any swelling after going that hard at practice? But I do think we'll see him. I don't know if it's going to be a situation to where he's ready for 15 or 20 carries. But I do think getting a guy like that back can really provide life and give a lift to the offense. I think you could see it when Rashad Dubinion really lit up talking about him in an interview this week. And that's a guy who might lose carries once Rocket comes back. So I think, everybody knows how talented he is. When you get him back, it provides a boost and maybe a little bit of added momentum. And hey, it's interesting. It feels like the ground game's been better the last couple weeks. Maybe the offensive line will continue to progress, but we haven't seen that vintage Arkansas rushing game yet. They don't have a 100-yard rusher in a game yet this season. They don't have a 200-yard ground game. I know it's a different offense, but there's still a ton of talented legs in the backfield for that to be the case. So, if Rocket can play and he's splitting some carries in there with Green and Dubinion, who showed us some things last couple weeks. KJ gets going with his legs. Maybe that rushing attack can finally start to hit its stride a little bit, because it's still going to wind up being a strength of this team at some point.
Yeah, and I think that with Dan Enos's offense, they've obviously taken some time to get accustomed and adjusted and getting to know everybody. I think they'll be better for it in the long run, but I definitely think it has impacted them early in the year. Your last point, obviously, can Arkansas stay out of its own way? That's been a big problem. Too many penalties, 14 penalties, 11 penalties. You have back-to-back Nathan Bax jumping off sides, back-to-back plays and start the fourth quarter. That's not how you want to start the fourth quarter of a close game like that. But obviously that's a big point. So just speak on that a little bit, Curtis, and if you got any kind of thoughts on how this game's going to play out this year. I know we do our predictions, tomorrow, but you might have something in your mind.
Yeah, for sure. And at the end of the day, I believe Arkansas has a good football team. I mean, they do, but so does everyone else in the SECs. Like you're not going to win too many games when you continuously punch yourself in the stomach, or maybe even a little bit lower than that, like from week to week. You know,
Zing.
So the penalties, it's got to be cleaned up. The situational football, you're not going to nail it every time. There's got to be a balance there. The timeouts, all that. You hit on it all, right? So they've got to start cleaning some of that stuff up. But as far as the game goes, it's interesting. I was listening to another podcast this morning, a national one, and the guy says that he sees KJ Jefferson failing to convert on a last-minute 4th and 22 after getting sacked on back-to-back plays, and Arkansas losing by 3. And that wouldn't surprise me at all, like given how this series has gone. But, there's been a lot of – it's like stinking thinking out there for the last couple of weeks around the program. But I really have been impressed with what I've seen internally. When we've been out at practice this week, I mean, to me, like I've seen Sam Pittman with extra pep in his step. I've seen an Arkansas team that's lively. They're high energy. They're getting after it. It's been physical. They talked about a lot of that stuff, the vibes feeling different before the BYU game. But this week, I actually am buying into it. I feel it. I've been seeing it. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think this is going to be Cam Little's revenge game from last year. I think the Hogs are going to walk it off and win this one 30-28.
All right, Curtis. Well, I don't disagree. I picked Arkansas to win this one in the preseason. The question is, can they win this one? Can they beat Ole Miss and get back on track? Because I had them at 8 wins. If they could do that, then they'll be right back on track. 8 wins.
They got a shot.
Yeah. All right, Curtis. Appreciate you, brother. Good luck at basketball today.
Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. All right, everybody. That's Kurt Wilkerson. Again, you can follow him at @KurtWilkerson_. HawgSports senior analyst. Covers a lot of sports. Does a lot of things. Wears a lot of hats for us. Okay. Let's see. We are 32 minutes in. Let's just look at this matchup just a little bit. Razorback offense versus Texas A&M defense. Arkansas is putting up 36.5 points per game. Texas A&M averaging 17.8 points a game. You look at down the numbers, and Texas A&M pretty solid in most categories. Total defense, 273.8 yards a game. Arkansas putting up 384.2. So just on the surface, it looks, obviously, just from the numbers, Texas A&M defense a little stouter than Arkansas's offense, but obviously Arkansas's offense really started to pick it up in the last game. They just got to stay out of their own way. You're not going to win this game with double-digit penalties. You're just not. You're not going to win this game if you're losing the turnover battle, or you're making just huge, colossal errors like we saw in last game when they're really ready to just kind of put their foot on A&M's throat, and the next thing it's a touchdown the other way. It's a 14-point swing right there in an instant. Got to be stronger in goal line situation. 4th and 1. You can't be jumping off sides at the goal line or on a 2-point conversion. Arkansas got that 2-point conversion against LSU, but they also jumped off sides. All kinds of things like that just can't happen. You have to limit your mistakes. I always say this every year, and people are like, they didn't beat us. We beat themselves. We beat ourselves. No, what happened is you made mistakes, and they made you pay for them. And that's how college football, generally, when you have two teams in the SEC that, have been under their coaching staffs, have established programs, two teams in the SEC face each other. It's the team not necessarily that makes the most mistakes, but the team that makes the other team pay the most for those mistakes. You didn't lose the game. They took it from you. They beat you. Okay? And that's why Arkansas has lost this game so many times, because Texas A&M has made them pay time and time again, whether it's an untimely penalty, whether it's going for it at the goal line and not getting it. All kinds of things like that cost Arkansas wins. This game has gone into overtime several times. It's been decided by a field goal several times, and Arkansas has a tremendous losing streak. Not a losing streak because it's 1-1 the last 2, but over the last 11, that's 10 losses. We talked about that already. A lot of young players for Texas A&M. They had that huge recruiting class in the class of 2022, so you see a lot of younger players on the offensive side of the ball. I look at the offensive line. It's not just like littered with super highly regarded recruits on the offensive line. It's about what you would expect from most SEC teams, where you look at, the defense and it's just like top 100 player after top 100, top 10 player after top 10 player. Just a lot of really highly regarded recruits on that side of the ball. Let's look at that real quick. So just from a numbers perspective, We talked about Max Johnson a little bit already and his passing numbers. He can run a little bit. He's not super mobile. He had a 15-yard carry against Auburn. But Amari Daniels, Le'Veon Moss. Moss, I believe, was in the class of 2022. He's a little more highly regarded. Daniels isn't quite as big, but he's fast, shifty, older back. Evan Stewart was an elite prospect. Let's see. Evan Stewart, here's his note. So Evan Stewart was the number 6 overall prospect in the country in the class of 2022 at wide receiver. So big time player. 22 catches for 307 yards, 14-yard average to lead them. We all know Aniyah Smith, older player, still feels like, as mentioned earlier, he's been there forever. Noah Thomas missed the Auburn game. He's a well-regarded recruit too. He could be back for this one. Aniyah Smith wasn't super highly regarded too. It seems like, they've got some guys that weren't that highly regarded also that are really good players for them. As I mentioned, Jake Johnson's the tight end. He was a top 100 prospect. He's Max Johnson's brother, also in the class of 2022. You're going to see a lot of this guy was from the class of 2022 type players. Let's see. On the offensive line, as I mentioned, there's not like just one elite recruit after another, but they have a couple, obviously. They start a freshman at right tackle in Chase Bisontis. 6'6", 320. He was the number 72 overall prospect in the country on 24/7 Sports in this past class of 2023. So he's just a true freshman. And then you have Bryce Foster at center, who we're familiar with, played in last year's game. He's class of 2021. He was a top 100 prospect, number 89 overall. Players have talked about him a good bit so far. We're going to get to some questions now. We haven't had a chance to get to a whole lot of questions in recent shows. I think we did a lot last week, but we're going to get to some now. But before we do that, I want to remind you about my friends over at Ozarks Go. Again, you can reach them at ozarksgo.net/hog. That's HAWG, 479-684-4900 if you want to talk to them, find out a little bit more about their internet service. They're not going to get you in on some low rate and then slowly jack your rate up year after year, and then you call and say, hey, why is my rate so high, or I want to cancel or something, and they say, well, let's drop your rate $40. You're not going to do that. They're just going to give you a great rate now, and they're going to keep it at that rate. You're going to pay the same this year as you're going to pay next year with Ozarks Go. One of the things I like about their service, they're also local. When you call the number, you're not going to be getting some call center or something. You're going to talk to somebody local who's from this area, who probably knows about the Razorbacks if you need to talk about the Hogs some more. But go check out our friends at Ozarks Go. I've mentioned several times I've never unplugged and replugged my router. Never one time in 2.5 years since I've had them here. And that's what they always tell you to do when your internet's not working. But guess what? My internet's always worked. Reliable service, fast speeds at Ozarks Go. Reach them at ozarksgo.net/HAWG. Use that HAWG at the end so they know that you heard it from us. Okay. The betting line on this game, the last I saw on the Bet Saracen app, was 6.5, plus 6.5 for Arkansas. Let's see if it's changed. I looked right after the injury news came out about Wegman and Max Johnson starting over him. It has dropped a point. So now Arkansas is plus 5.5. So dropped a full point after the injury news to Texas A&M starting quarterback. Max Johnson's certainly very capable, but that line maybe is a little bit more intriguing. Arkansas on the money line is plus 185. That's also gone down, obviously, as you would expect, from plus 200. The over-under is 53.5. That has gone down a couple of points. So basically, Texas A&M having their starter versus having their backup is worth about a point. Somehow it's also worth about, 2 points. I guess Arkansas is going to score fewer points now too, because it was 55.5. There's a lot of interesting prop bets on there too that I was looking at the other day. Stuff like, will Rocket Sanders have this many yards and this many touchdowns, stuff like that. Okay. Hey, guys, I want to take a moment real quick. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, I mentioned before, it just always shocks me that 71% of our viewers aren't subscribed to the channel. So subscribe, hit the notifications bell so you're alerted anytime we upload new videos. Also, HawgSports is just $1 right now if you want to get in. It's a great time. Basketball season starting up. We're in the meat of the SEC football schedule. Recruiting is going to pick up here in a little bit too, but this used to be a real busy time in recruiting, but it's kind of the calendar's changed so much lately. So all that stuff's going to be happening. Okay, let's see. I appreciate the kind words, Daniel. Landon Montgomery says, "Is this game a season turning point for both teams?" For Arkansas, potentially, yeah. I mean, Texas A&M just has one loss. I know the standard's going to be higher for Jimbo Fisher in year 5 or 6 for him. I know the standard's going to be higher, year 6, I think. But for Arkansas, yeah, I think in a lot of ways this is a big turning point game. And you're talking about 3 losses in a row. If you didn't think it was toxic before, then, I mean, it's going to. I mean, you lose 3 in a row, people are, you're going to lose. You're going to have more detractors. You just are. So, yeah, it's a big game for Arkansas. And I mean, the next one after that is Ole Miss. And if you lose to Ole Miss, then you got Alabama. And if you lose that one, then yeah. So, yeah, it's a big game for Arkansas. Marcus Huck says, really enjoy your passion. Keep up the great work, Trey. I appreciate that. Thank you, Marcus. Try to bring some energy to the show. Dylan McCrary says, how does our offensive line hold up during this game? I mean, when you look at the other side of the ball, it's just like one stud after another, like very, very highly recruited defensive linemen, linebackers, defensive backs. But that defensive line, it's young, but it's also got some veterans. But they've got some really good young studs on that defensive line. So it's an important – I mean, KJ's going to have to use his legs. You're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to – that screen game's going to need to be working. I mean, Arkansas has got to get better at the tackles, okay? So, they've been pretty good inside, but there have just been times where – and Kudus is just young. He's probably just their 5th best offensive lineman. I mean, that's just how it is, and he's going to be a really good player, but he's still learning on the go. We see times where he gets bull rushed and put on his back. There's also times where he does really good things and shows his athleticism. Devon Manuel also a couple of times just really struggled, but for the most part, I thought Devon was a pretty significant upgrade overall, and he should be healthier. I got him at 76% of the snaps last week, but he should be healthier for this one. If Devon Manuel's healthy, I just think he's so big and athletic that he can be just a real good player for Arkansas in future years. But the main thing Arkansas has got to do beyond all that stuff, they got to stop shooting themselves in the foot. They can't just keep making careless penalties. I mean, they just can't. It bit you last week. It's going to bite you again. I mean, the problem last week, and because of penalties, how close was Luke Haz after that score? This close, and then you jump off sides, and then you have a miscommunication on 3rd down, and you're settling for another field goal. Those are the kinds of things that cost you ball games. In this conference where everything's so close, everybody works so hard, puts so much effort into it, it's those little things like that get you. Zach Wharton says, do you think we can find success taking more shots downfield? Armstrong and Broden had 2 great long ball catches last game. Yeah, I think so. I think KJ does that best. I think throwing the long ball is one of his best attributes. And we certainly saw them do that a lot in camp. I know they throw a lot of post patterns. They like to utilize the middle of the field, more dig routes than we've seen in the past, and also a lot of screens. So they use a lot of the field. But yes, I would say that. And hey, tight end seam, Luke Haz, real deal. James Kirk says Arkansas fans lose their mind with another close loss, need a win or a clear loss. So one way or the other, just a blowout one way or the other. Bill Richards says Hogs win 38-35. That would be refreshing to see Arkansas win a close game. But I think I would take the blowout win that James Kirk suggested. John Smith says, Trey, what did you think of the Jake Beckett comments on Twitter? I mean, I've looked over them a little bit. Whether I agree or disagree on some of Jake's political stuff, I don't get political. And people who know me know that. And so I'm not going to engage in any kind of political talk. And I don't get in any kind of pissing matches on Twitter. Zachary Beeler says, Hogs 38-28. John Smith says, Zachary, you've been on a lot of the shows lately. I know who you are. John Smith says, Trey, do you think Rocket will be back this week? Yes, I do think Rocket will be back this week. I don't know if he practiced Wednesday yet. I don't know that. I assume he did since he was able to go Tuesday after Monday's practice, even though Wednesday they were going to take it a little lighter on him. How much he carries the ball remains to be seen. But usually it's a progression into getting, back full speed. So I would be maybe a little surprised if they did more than 10 carries. But I don't know. Maybe if they've rested him up, hey, you're ready to go, 15, 16, 20 carries, who knows? But I'm thinking the odds are probably 10 or less. As much as I'd love to see him more. And, that's just a guess on my part, really, if I'm being honest. Annette Lanier Delgado says, "Go Hogs, I believe our coaches are the best and team. You are the best." Thanks. Everybody's great. Dalton Adams says, "Hopefully we see Satania utilized more as a weapon on offense and has continued to develop as a force at tight end." Yeah, I could see them trying to do some things to take away Has in this game since he has had so much success, has had. I think they've tried to do things with Isaac Teslaw after his first game. Kent State did, BYU. So, yeah, I could see them maybe trying to take some things away there. Maybe that opens up something for somebody else. You just got to find that guy and recognize what's happening. Pittman did say on Wednesday that they do have some stuff for Satania. When he's asked about Satania, he always kind of points to the other guys. Like we had, 3 other guys doing really good things. I just think Satania brings a little bit different aspect to the game with his shiftiness. And, all these guys are fast, but Satania has a little bit different kind of giddy up. Scott Alexander said the table is set. The offense is ready to explode. All this team needs is confidence. A win Saturday will be huge. Yes. It would be nice to have a little bit different mood, something different kind of talk about. This A&M writer sounds extremely confident. LOL. Yeah, I would say that's pretty common with A&M writers. We've had Tarp on a number of times. I just skipped my spot. Okay. Josh G says, or Gee, says, I think I just said orgy. Trey, I heard you on the radio the other day that can we get some more Sam Pittman impersonations? Well, he always says things of that nature. I'd have to think of something to say. I always think back to Danny was talking about, this time he was talking to him about, actually I was talking to him about this one time. I'll do this one. I asked him, so it's Dan Skipper. Are you, with him being so tall, are you worried about him, being able to bend? Well, if we didn't think he could bend, we wouldn't have recruited him. Landon Montgomery says, any chance KJ returns? I'm sure Rocket is a lock to be gone. Oh, returns for his senior year? I would say outside chance. He's a fifth-year senior. You see the graduate badge on him. We had him yesterday listed right here with his graduate hat and everything. I could see him probably moving on, but you never know. Things happen. I think Rocket probably will move on. He's a former 1,400-yard rusher. Despite what happens this season, running backs, typically when they get that opportunity, they put a really great season behind them. They're draft eligible. Usually you see them go. So I think they probably will. Matthew McKenzie says, I think this will be like 2015 Auburn game. The Hogs offense will finally take off. Hogs 45-38. 2015 Auburn game wasn't what you think, Matthew. There was 3 overtimes. Arkansas, that was 17-17, I think. 17-17, yeah. I think Arkansas's offense took off pretty well. They just got to get out of their own way with the penalties against LSU. That's not some chump defense that they face. That's the best defense they'd faced to this point, and they played the best they have so far. But 2015, that went to 3. It never should have gone into overtime. It went to 3 overtimes. But after that game is when you really saw the offensive numbers start exploding. Landon Montgomery says, where is Greer? Are the other backers more talented? We only saw 2 other linebackers. The only 2 linebackers that played defensive snaps were Pooh Paul and Jaheim Thomas. That was it. They need to rotate that a little bit more. I understand whenever you rotate, there has to be a balance, right? With your starters, how good are your starters when they're tired versus your top backups? What's that balance? And I guess they feel like their starters, when they get a little tired, are still better than their backups. But we expected to see this. Once they get into the meat of the schedule, you don't see as much rotation, and trying to figure some things out. But I feel like Greer is a good enough player that he can come in and spell them, and a reliable enough player, a veteran enough player that he can come in and get that rotation. You really need a 3-man rotation because it's not so much about are these guys going to be tired by the fourth quarter. It's just wear and tear on your body throughout the season. And you're going to need all your linebackers, right? You're going to want these guys to the back end of the season. So it's important to take some snaps off of them, in my opinion. Not as much as the defensive line, but more than in the secondary. This kind of goes progressively back how much you want to take off of them. Landon Montgomery says, do we see Satania finally get the start this week? No, he's not going to start. Dalton Adams says, I hope Sam proves me wrong with the carries split like he did last week and keeps giving the hot hand. You know, I mentioned this in the walk and talk, but I feel like DeBinion, they just wanted to give DeBinion more carry. I feel like DeBinion is the second most talented back that they have. And that's why maybe they didn't just feed A.J. But DeBinion also hits it a little bit harder. A.J., when he sees a crease, and he can hit it and break off a huge run. DeBinion, we just see a lot of, he'll run into a wall for you. And not that A.J. won't, it's just, different styles, different things that they're good at. And DeBinion, when he hits that wall, he gets 3 yards or more, as we saw on Saturday. Mark Douglas says, last game we only played 2 linebackers. I mentioned that. Are we in danger of repeating the last several years? Our defense running out of gas second half. I just think they need to get a more rotate. I mean, they have that defensive line. Zach Williams only played 4 snaps. I don't think we saw Nico Dabier. We saw Ian Gerard for 1 snap. I don't know when that was. Maybe it was at the goal line or something. And then Tank Booker was out. So, yes, it's great to have a 1A, 1B type defensive line, but also, you've got some guys that are 1C. I think Tank is going to be good to go in this one. So keep rotating those guys around and keep Eric Gregory, Torian Carter, Cam, your 2 starting defensive ends. Keep those guys healthy for that fourth quarter. John Allen says, where's Keith Grayson? Keith has had a lot going on. I'm sure he'll share it with us. He's got some, nothing bad, but, just personal things going on. He's selling his mansion, and it's just a lot. So he's just been busy, and he's also coaching right now. I want to get Keith back on. I actually exchanged text with him yesterday or day before, but I want to get Keith back on. But he just had a lot going on early in the year, but we'll get him back. Okay. A lot of requests for Keith Grayson if you're watching, Keith. You do a great job, Trey. Appreciate that, Jared. John Smith also missing Keith Grayson. Butch Joyner says, like hearing from Tarp on the other side, but he sounds very confident in the Aggies. John Smith says, Trey, what's your take on Josh Braun? I've seen him make some outstanding plays with run push, but I've also seen him lose his block in both run and pass plays. I would say I agree. There are times where I look at Braun and he does stuff. I'm like, man, he's moving that dude. And there are other times where it's just like you said. Yeah, just kind of he's got to be consistent. We know he's got it. I think the interior of the offensive line is definitely the strength. I think everybody sees that. I think once Devon Manuel gets healthy, he can be a strength for him at left. And you just got to get Curtis continue to work. And he has a lot of ability. He's just very young. He's a true sophomore. Curtis is younger as a true sophomore than several of the true freshmen. He's the youngest second-year player on the team. I mean, he just turned 19, like in August, just turned 19. So, pretty young guy overall. A lot of potential. Why is it, man, I hate you, Facebook, when you start jumping around like this. I hate you. All right, where is it? Where's my spot? It'll just, like, for those who don't know, like, the response is just every once in a while I'll go, and I'll completely lose my spot. Why is it saying you get any playing time? It's a good question. If you ask Pittman, he'll say the other guys are playing so well, but, we kind of talked about it. I think he'll play some offense this game, but if Satania, like, catches a pass and takes it to the house, everybody's going to be like, what the hell? If that happens, like, on his first pass or something like that. No penalties, play clean, we win, plain and simple. Timothy David Long says, please tell me no white helmets. I haven't heard anything on that, but you don't wear the white helmets with the red uniform, in my opinion, just like you don't wear the chrome helmets with the red uniform either. I've heard people talking about break out the chrome helmets. Chrome helmets, white jersey. Let's have a little taste, people, okay? Let's don't get tacky. I wasn't a big fan of the red pants Saturday. Maybe you were. I didn't think they looked as bad as the no stripe pants, red pants. But I like the traditional jersey. I think it looks sharp. I think it looks clean. It doesn't look overdone. Like sometimes you can just get too much going on. I just like the way the jersey looks. I do like the chrome, though. But chrome goes with white, in my opinion. Bush Joyner says, take the points. Always take the points, in my opinion, unless you got to have it, unless mathematically you're just out of it. I was really pleased to see them kick the field goal Saturday. I mean, but what were they going to do, test it again? Like they got the fourth down on that fake field goal. They're going to go for another fourth down. I mean, and it was longer. I mean, longer distance to get the first down and longer kick. Garrett Michael Scott says, I agree. DeBinion is just, there we go, jumping around. Stupid Facebook messages. All right. Garrett Michael Scott says, not you guys aren't stupid, just the forum, just the way it's set up. I agree. DeBinion is the man, just had fumble issues. DeBinion, once he started, as he said the other day, trusting the offensive line, which is what we all saw, especially like those pin and pull plays, and he's trying to just stretch it out to no man's land. Once he started trusting the hole's going to be there, we saw what happened. Brian Hendley says, I really like Haz, but haven't seen the transfer T from North Texas. What's his stats? We saw him a little bit Saturday, but he's just been slower to come along. And, Arkansas has used some two tight end sets. We saw that a lot last week, actually. But when they did that, it seems like they want to bring in a blocking guy. I don't think we even saw, I'm spacing on the Louisville transfer. Based on his name. But we saw backs last game, but I don't even think we saw why am I spacing on his name? I can see his face. Where's too much paint, too much eye black. That's bugging me right now. Somebody post it. But we saw two tight end sets, but when they do that, you tend to go with the guy more of a blocker. And, Gums is about like identical to Luke Haz in terms of his size. Like they're both 6'3", 240 something, But he's just been, he didn't enroll early. I think that put him a bit behind. But I want to see him get out there too because I think he can be a weapon for him. But, Haz is playing like 60-something snaps also. Clint Wharton says, I think Dominic Johnson should be H-back, fullback. He hasn't flashed at all this year. I mean, he's made some plays. I mean, the guy's coming off 2 ACLs, but he can move a pile. And I like him closer to the line of scrimmage, like you said. They have that, run that dead tee that we've seen a few times, which it's also gotten him into trouble. They've had, they false started, and they got to delay a game one time when they were putting that set in early in the season. I mean, but I like them all being closer to the line of scrimmage in that short yardage, and Dominic Johnson playing that fullback spot, I like that too. But he can also play running back. I mean, he had 2 carries for 14 yards against BYU, and I think they were to the outside, if I remember. I think he also had one that was a nice run that didn't happen because of penalty. Jonathan Mosley says either A&M is going to find a way to win or the Hogs are going to find a way to lose. They have yet to demonstrate they can close out big games. They haven't beaten anybody. I hope I'm wrong. We have 8-win roster, but not an 8-win coaching staff. Well, right now, I mean, they lost BYU because of penalties. They lost LSU because of penalties. And LSU and BYU, as I said before, made them pay for it. So you run into a team that's capable of making you pay for your mistakes, and you make mistakes, you're going to lose. Unless the other team makes too many mistakes, too, and you make them pay. Jonathan Mosley says just read that, Ricio Patrick says, okay, I'm sorry, it's Spanish. I could put it in Google Translate and play it, but I don't know what you're saying. Something about hospitalized. Oh, okay, this is all spam. Should I just read it in my best Spanish? He's got a number on here he wants you to call. Something about Dios. I know that means God. Okay. that's enough. But I think it's probably maybe spamming about church. Chris Foley says the color looked wrong, though, almost Bama-like. Ooh. The color on, the pants? They looked a little off color. Brian Henley says Francis Sherman. Brian Henley says Francis, and Mark Harden says Sherman. Francis Sherman, Francis Sherman, Francis Sherman. Sorry, Francis. All right, everybody. I'm not going to forget Francis Sherman now. See, I said it 3 times and use it in a sentence. A great technique to use if you need to remember somebody's name. 3 times and use it in a sentence. All right, everybody. I want to thank you for your questions. I want to thank our subscribers, of course, at HawgSports.com. I want to thank Jeff Tarpley for hopping on with us. I'll see him Saturday when I'm in Arlington. Next time I see you guys, I'll be walking around AT&T Stadium following the game for the walk and talk. And also thanks Curtis Wilkerson for hopping on with us as well. All right, everybody. I'm picking Arkansas on this one, I think. I know I shouldn't. I picked them in the preseason. I just, I don't know. I think, I don't know. It could be bad if there's a 3-game losing streak, but I don't know. I think Arkansas is going to put this one together. I think they've got a good enough team to do it. It's a veteran team. It's older. Texas A&M, has some veteran players, but they do rely on a lot of younger players, albeit guys that are one day going to be in the NFL. So it's an interesting mix, I think. But I'm going to take Arkansas on this one, even though it's going to be a battle and it's going to come down to mistakes. I'm going to bank on Arkansas getting a lot of those mistakes cleaned up in this one. That's what it's going to come down to. Can Arkansas clean up the mistakes? I'm going to go with them finally doing it, even though we haven't seen it. And I don't like to pick Arkansas to win games when I don't see them win, but they did beat them a couple years ago. I'm not confident in it in the pick, so take that for what it's worth. If you're going to bet Saracen, do it on your own thoughts, because who knows how it's going to pay off. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.